Dennis Surratt argues in his book Atlantis and Reign of the Giants that scientists at any one time and over centuries offer different and differing theories and interpretations about everything from the nature of celestial body to the composition of atomic particles. But he also argues that the human imagination is a source of knowledge that is consistent. It continues to bring forward new forms of ancient schemes. Among such schemes are views of Atlantis, the deluge, the giants. There is no discussion at this point at the nature of imagination or intuition. He states that science is what a scientist says it is, a view that came into its own 2 decades later. Science is a social construct. By failing to distinguish between science as a body of knowledge and science as an embodiment of a method, a self-correcting mode of inquiry if done right, the notion of measurement goes out the window. By failing to distinguish between science as a body of knowledge and science as an embodiment of a method, a self-correcting mode of inquiry, the notion of measurement goes out the window. This leaves the door unlocked for popular theories that seem to account for a wide array of prehistoric and ethnographic anomalies. Orbigaryism, the cosmogony of the Austrian engineer. According to Zecharia Sitchin, a race of super beings who about 450,000 years ago landed on Earth and created the human race to act as slaves to mine for the gold that they so desired. These human-like beings were the inspiration for the gods of ancient times, and they bear such names as Marduk, Enlil, Enki, Osiris, Seth, etc. They are described in Akkadian and Sumerian texts as the Anunnaki, and they are named in Genesis the Elohim and Nephilim, those who from heaven to earth came, or fallen ones, or men. In the book of Genesis, the Egyptians knew them as the Neter. Their males cohabited with female apes, and through genetic engineering created the human race. It is a complex story, and their presence are recorded in the ancient texts of the world's major religions. It seems they were giants. I don't think we have any part of us in us that's an ape. I don't think we come from apes. Maybe aqua apes, but not savanna apes. Next to the theory of Velikovsky and Sitchin, Surratt's reaches based largely on the writings of Bellamy and Allen are tame stuff. I wish they wouldn't put Velikovsky with Sitchin. They have nothing in common, except they're both from Russia. Yet they predated the works of these Russian thinkers and appeared in 2 books originally published in regular editions. That's good enough. He reads the books that convey his speculations on planetary formation and the evolution of various species of early life in a style characterized by high spirit, dramatic expression, bold exaggeration, and disdain for the accepted opinions of the scientific establishment. I like that. Readers today rarely encounter the original editions and have to make do with mass-market paperback reprint editions with bright maroon and gold covers. Copies were issued in the tens of thousands by Surratt. They flooded the French-language book market and brought Surratt's name into a sphere of controversy. Surratt wrote with equal fluency in French and English. There's a lot of that book that I enjoyed, and that is Atlantis and the Giants. He has another one that I would like to check out, but it's in French, and that is Planet of the Insects. I wish I could read a little bit of that. It sounds interesting. It consists of about 2/3 of the text, original French. Missing are chapters on the relevance of his argument to theosophical ruminations, dream analysis. Did you notice that when you talk about Atlantis and Lemuria, you're always really close to the Rosicrucians or the Theosophists? They seem to go like hand in hand for some reason. I haven't figured out why yet. They must really think it. Here he gets, I don't know, a little bit kind of off the tracks for a minute. Let's see. For convenience's sake, the earlier lunar bodies will be referred to as Luna 1, Luna 2, and Luna 3. Present lunar body would be called the Moon. Its future successors will be termed Moon 2, 3, etc. The lunar bodies ancestral to our Moon are believed to be 3 in number, as suggested by the evidence from geological records. Well, you see, that could just easily be planets. From archaeological remains, from ethnological reports, folk beliefs, and from the intact record of the imagination of man, what there is of it. There may have been more than 3 early lunar bodies, perhaps as many as 5, 6, or 7. Whatever their number, the fate of each satellite was the same. It wanders in from the solar system. It approaches the orbit of the Earth. It is captured by the Earth's gravitation. Eventually, its orbit begins to decay. It orbits closer and closer to Earth. It breaks up, leaving a trail, rather like the rings of Saturn. Oh, how convenient that he mentioned Saturn. You know, our moon isn't getting closer. It's getting further away. Whatever remains eventually crashes into the Earth. Okay. These crashes are cataclysmic in terms of the planet and embed evidence in the geological record. But what is unprecedented in the scenario thus described, as interpreted through Bellamy and Allen and Surratt, is that during the eons of orbital decay, the gravity of the lunar body raises the planet's water level in a belt around the equator, reducing the mountain peaks to mere islands in a near global sea. This tidal bulge accounts for features of early life forms. After each cataclysm, the rate of the Earth's rotation around the Sun is changed, so that under tertiary conditions, under Luna 3, until its crash, and the capture of the Moon, a day was longer than a day is now. For 290 days comprised the solar year, a detail noted by students of the ancient calendars of Tiwanaku. Well, we think that it was a drama with planets, but it's okay, you know. You still never know what you might learn. Periods of decreased gravity accelerated species evolution, as recorded by the fossil record, and what creates fossils. For instance, the primary period produced giant plants and insects. The secondary period produced giant animals. The third period produced the mammals, notably a giant race of what might be termed near men. Tertiary period has been equated with the Pleistocene, so it concluded some 30,000 years ago. I remember seeing something about a Pleistocene comet too that crashed into Greenland. The capture of the present moon is said to have occurred about 12,000 years ago, apparently well within the ancestral record of man. Thus, creationists should be heartened to read that there was a Noahian flood, but disheartened to learn that there were at least 2 earlier near-global deluges. Evidence exists wherever it may be encountered. How else is one to explain the anomalies to be found on the shores of Lake Titicaca? The Tiwanaku civilization was that of an advanced society of early seafarers, despite the fact that in their site today, located in the Andes, is one of the highest on Earth. They left behind gigantic ruins of structures that seem to have served the needs of giants. Such construction may still be found there, also on Easter Island, at Karnak, and Stonehenge, and on some Pacific islands. The giants that arose during the period of Luna 2 were the good giants. Those that arose during Luna 3 were the bad giants. Another word for good giant is god, for bad giant, ogre. And in Greek philosophy, the first are the Titans, the second the Olympians. In the dreams of the human species, the Golden Age lives on. Atlantis is the name that Plato gave to the legend of one specific sunken city, but it may well be applied to any. The legend of one and all, to any and all. the deluged places and civilizations of early men and giants, the casualties of successive creations. Is primitive man a newcomer to the planet, or is he a survivor of a previous calamity? And the giants? It seems they came from mountainous regions of the planet that enjoyed decreased gravity. They resembled human beings in most ways, but stood between 12 and 15 feet high. The earliest giants assisted mankind. The later ones thwarted them. Those beings that did not die of natural causes or from accidents were hunted down by men and killed. Samson and Goliath are the names of remembered giants of the distant past, just as the names and deeds of Kronos and Zeus are preserved in ancient myth. There is evidence of the use of advanced technologies by man in the prehistoric past, as well as evidence that leads one to infer the existence of a race of giants with a race of men. Particularly suggestive are the gigantic stones and monoliths studied by archaeologists among the Malekula group in New Guinea and the structures of the Toltecs in present-day Mexico. We assume that science is a feature of the modern world, and it certainly is, but ancient peoples had their own forms of science. For there are many sciences, using the plural word in the sense of explanations, and not necessarily natural or realistic explanation, or rationalistic explanations. The sciences of earlier civilizations were of psychic or spiritual in nature, whereas ours is one of the physical or material variety. Common to ancestral tradition and the beliefs of ancient peoples is the view that the civilization of the world, far from progressing, is in the state of decline, almost to the point of barbarism, I'll say. The modern view is that history is the record of progress from the world dominated by superstition to one guided by rationality and science. Hardly. We're still emotional and superstitious. But the traditionalist interpretation is that we are witnessing a disastrous decline in quality in the face of the rapid rise of quantity. Amen. It's been like that for, it's a long time, but just mostly for the last 20 or 30 years. Everything has to be supersized. Everything is always about size. It's ridiculous. Legends of senior civilizations in the past, lost technologies of great power, sunken cities of incredible beauty, and survivors of giant races. In fact, it's pretty safe to say we have everything just about upside down, don't we? All of these and more are preserved in traditions of the world's ancient peoples. The existence of giants is taken for granted by the author of Genesis and other books of the Bible. The mythology of ancient Greece offers the 4 ages of man, which could have been inspired by dim recollections of, at the very least, the collision of Luna 3 with the Earth, or Venus. Confirmations are found, or near collision, in the form of artifacts and legends, and the beliefs of ancient Egypt, the Semitic peoples, Abyssinia, Rwanda, China, and Tibet. The argument is taken thus far in the 10 chapters that appear in Atlantis and the Giants. Reading between the lines, it is possible to see that the arguments should be taken with a grain of salt. The author is well aware that nothing remains the same for long. Indeed, it does not. As well, adapting at reading literary texts and entering into the imaginary worlds of writers of poetry and fiction, he finds it easier to accept and remain within the general conceit than step outside it and access it. it is useful to quote the conclusions he reaches. Even if all this should prove to be wrong, in 20 or 30 years' time, which seems to be a very long lifetime for an idea in these fields, we shall remain grateful to Horbiger for being the first to give us a reasonable picture. A departure platform which enabled us to travel back 30,000 years, back to Tiwanaku and the Giants. Even if Horbiger, Bellamy, and myself are entirely in error, other things, undreamt of, have happened on the face of the earth, not so very different from our imaginings. There may have been no Horbigerian satellites, no Bellamy savages, and no giants, but there must have been planets most mysteriously formed, human beings full of inconceivable tricks and ideas, monsters 15 feet high using highly complicated tools and looking astonishingly like men.